Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome once again this week to a short reset lit yoga class. Today's class is going to be focusing on Cobra Pose, which is a back extension that we often find across many yoga disciplines, and certainly here in the lit methodology, we like to use it to really feel that expansion from the back. The thing with Cobra, we want to be able to get that back extension while maintaining a strong core. We maintain a strong core and support that low back with a little bit of work from the glutes. We can really lengthen the entire musculature of the back. So often, Cobra is directed in almost like this pushy and compressive way where you can see a lot of stuff starts to go down to the low back, and really my upper back isn't working at all here. So instead, I'm going to really encourage you to lift that belly, lengthen the spine, and use all the muscles of your back in this Cobra. As we usually do, we're going to get started on our backs though, before we get to our belly. So come down onto your back, your feet will be walked in. They don't have to be able to get touched by the fingers or anything. You just want to be able to have a good amount of space for the hip flexors here. Now take your palms up towards the ceiling and just face your palms in towards each other. So the fingers are reaching up to the ceiling, palms are facing in. You're going to reach your fingers up towards that ceiling. You should feel a little bit of shoulder blade protraction. So there's that feeling of your shoulder blades sliding away from each other and away from the center of the spine. And then I'm gonna have you retract your shoulder blades here and draw those shoulder blades, the scapula, together towards the spine and onto the back ribs. So this is another feeling that we're gonna wanna feel in our Cobra Pose, this feeling of the scapula, the shoulder blades sitting on the back ribs. And to mobilize that, we're just gonna do it a few more times. So you're reaching your fingers up, protracting, spreading those shoulder blades away, and then pulling those shoulder blades down and together, drawing them in, containing the ribs. Reaching the fingertips up, spreading the shoulder blades apart, rooting the tailbone, pulling the shoulder blades together, drawing, it's like you're drawing the head of your arm bone down into the floor with each arm. And your shoulder blades won't quite come to their full retraction. Let's go one more time, reaching those fingers up, spreading, because we have the floor in the way. And then again, sitting your shoulder blades onto the back ribs, feel like right where your arm bone plugs into your shoulder socket, but that's just like pulling down towards the floor. Then we'll all bring our hands to the tops of the thighs here, right where your legs plug into those hip flexors. Push into your feet, squeeze your glutes. If you need to give them a little slap or pat, that's a-okay. You want your brain to be able to find those glutes. And then directing your tailbone towards your heels, you're gonna lift off of the floor. You should be feeling like a little bit of rocket fuel from those glutes, igniting and firing up. So what we're doing here is this necessary action in Cobra of lengthening the front hips. So often when we're doing back extension and really anything with the back, extending it in our yoga class, what we're really talking about is hip opening, and especially the front of the hips opening up. So I want you to feel these fronts of the hips getting a little opening here. You've been holding it for a little bit. So now you're just going to lift and lower a couple of times. So now you've been holding it and you're lifting and lowering and just feeling those glutes fire up even more. With your hands at the front of the legs, you're gonna push on your palms and almost feel like that little hip flexor space is getting a little bit longer just from that press of the palm. Really, it's the glutes firing up and opening up that hip flexor from the muscle strength, but your hands are certainly helping give a little feedback to all those muscles, telling them where they need to be activating, and also giving a little signal to these front hips like, hey, it's okay, you can relax. We're working the back chain here so that we can try and get you open. And then one more time, just hold your little low bridge lift, feel that little extension of the hips. Just take your right hand up to the ceiling. Again, plug that arm bone into the floor and pull back on your fingers of the right hand with your left hand. Even look at your right thumb. Pull it away from the center of the palm. Just take a big breath in there. If you need to go a little lower with your hips, don't quite touch the ground. Still try to keep those glutes on, but feel free to go a little bit lower. Release the right wrist, stretch the left wrist. You're pulling back on those fingers. You could also walk your feet out further, especially if you're feeling it in the knee there. Oh, my hamstring just bit on me a little bit. Right glute, fire up more. That right hamstring tried to take over and do too much. So when that glute is working, you'll have just a little more balance to the whole system. And then release your left wrist and bring yourself all the way down. We're gonna bring our hands behind our head, and like we always do, we're gonna fire up this core with this little weekly reset. Take those hands behind the head, pull those elbows in. Take an inhale. Exhale, draw your belly button down in towards the low back and lift your shoulder blades off of the ground. Shoulder blades are lifted, head is relaxing. You're pressing your skull into the back of the palms. Inhale and lower. Exhale and lift. So we're trying to maintain length in the neck, pulling the core in, and then just take your left forearm to your low ribs. So you're taking your forearm to your ribs, you're stamping it into the ribs, and you're like buckling a seatbelt, trying to get yourself that much more engaged. Strapping in. Left hand comes back, inhale and lower. We hold these abdominal works, exhale and lift, belly button draws into the low back, shoulder blades lift up, right forearm to those low ribs. So we hold this abdominal work to really activate the stabilizing muscles around your spine. If we want more space in the spine, then we got to get everything awake, ready to communicate, work with each other. Right hand comes back behind the head, inhale and lower. And this will be a little bit different. So we're firing up the core, but now you're gonna come onto your forearms. So you have a little bit of heat in that core, but you're gonna grab either side of your mat. So like literally grab the edges of your mat and like try to pull it apart. You should feel your shoulder blades come onto those back ribs. If that doesn't quite work for you, you could also bring your fingertips onto the sides of the ribs. And that's another really great way to keep this containment. But if you're grabbing the sides of the mat, trying to almost pull it apart, feeling those shoulder blades on the back ribs, you're containing your low ribs, you're just gonna start to extend one leg at a time. One foot comes down, the other one kicks forward. So I joke around, I call this fake relaxing on the beach core work, but you are still doing core work here. And what we're really cultivating is maintaining a long neck. So I'm not letting my chin lift up. I'm also not overly tucking it in and forcing my neck to hold me up as I'm doing my core work. I'm relying on the abdominals to do that steady work of holding it all together. Now either stick with that, or you can keep your legs long and just kind of alternate one and then the other. You're still kind of leaning back into these shoulders. And again, it's this feeling of the scapula, of those back shoulder blades sitting on those ribs that will create the connection in the upper core to ignite the upper core, the shoulders, and to lengthen the whole spine. So when we come into that Cobra, we're gonna want the whole core to work, and that includes all those back muscles. So again, your feet could be on the ground, just kicking one at a time, or lowering one and then the other. And let's just do that for another 5, 4, 3, grab your mat, pull it apart, 2, or hold those ribs in, 1, both knees come down. And before we lose that, come around onto hands and knees. You're coming into a quadruped. So you just did all that good work in the glutes, all that good work in the core. Palms are gonna be on the ground. Press your palms into the floor, grip the ground with those fingertips. You wanna feel like there's energy coming up from the floor, because there is. It's called ground reaction force. So you wanna use that force in the ground, all that potential energy, use the energy of your core and your body by pushing into your palms. You should feel the energy come back from the floor, up your arm, and sitting those shoulder blades on the back ribs. Before we even start to move, your palms are gonna be really glued to the mat. So they won't move much. And your wrists, everyone's a little bit different, but your wrists are mostly lined up with this short, top line of the mat. So with those hands under the shoulders and those palms glued in, I want you to look at each of your hands. Feel like you could take your right hand and dial it out towards the right. So it's like it would go spinning out to the right, but again, it does not move. You're just wrapping that elbow in, sitting your shoulder blade on your back rib, scapula engagement. Look at the left hand, dial the left hand out to the left without actually moving it. Just feel your arm bone, that humeral head, gets centered in that shoulder socket. Bring your mind to your low ribs and make sure they're pulling in here. You're not sinking down to the ground. And then lastly, your hands, again, won't move, but feel like you could pull them back towards your knees and towards your hips. So this should help to activate the lower muscles under the shoulders, around the side ribs. You're just, again, helping to really set that scapula on the back ribs here. Really nice job here. And then we're going to come into a pull of the chest forward. So it's kind of like our Cobra Pose that we're gonna take. Just like in Cobra Pose, keep your belly button lifting into the low back, so the guts will not spill out all over the floor here. Grab the floor with your fingertips, pull with your hands. Again, they don't actually move, but it's like you're trying to pull them back towards your knees, and you lightly broaden the chest. So this collarbone here in front feels like it's getting wider. And then just come back into that quadruped with the shoulder blades sitting on the back ribs. It's gonna be a small movement here, just like our Cobra might feel like a small movement for you. Pull the hands back, broaden the chest, keep the belly lifting into the low back. So you're lengthening the whole back. I know it might not feel like as much as you usually get, but you're holding your spine with balance. Push into the hands and just bring those shoulder blades back onto those back ribs. Again, feel like your hands are slightly pulling back. Small movement here. Again, pulling the hands, broadening the chest, a slight lift of the tailbone, and then pressing into the hands and just feeling those shoulder blades come back onto the back ribs. So your shoulders should be feeling pretty fired up. You need to give your wrists a little shake out. You're welcome to do that. Then slide your right foot back, slide your left foot back, plank pose for a moment here. We practiced this before. If you need a little help with your plank, go to the plank reset class. But lower both your knees to the ground. Again, keep your left hand underneath your left shoulder, your right hand underneath your right shoulder. One thing I do see a lot in yoga classes that you might want to check on your own at home here is, are your hands like really far forward? You really do want to get your palms just directly underneath those shoulders. Stop the class and take a picture of yourself if you're not too sure. The toes are untucked. I like this because I kind of tuck my toes. I'm pushing them down into the ground. And what this does, stay on your hands, but it'll light your front of the body up. So it's like you take a zipper from your hips and it's zipping all the way up into that sternum, into that bone right above the heart. Glutes are on, not like 100%, but there's like a 50, 60% squeeze to them. And then just bend your elbows like an inch. Keep the head of the arm bones lifted, pushing the hands and straighten. Then we'll bend them either an inch or you might come halfway down. Pushing the hands and straighten. And then one more time, this time we'll all lower all the way down. So controlled, head of the arm bones stay lifted. Keep the belly lifted. Don't let those ribs hit the ground first. And then come all the way to the ground. So again, even your forehead could be down, but the head of the arm bones are lifted. So I haven't rolled my shoulders forward, and I certainly didn't lead with my chest on the way down. Instead, my hands are by my side. Again, I'm pushing into my palms. Feel like you could dial your right hand out to the right, your left hand out to the left. This should automatically squeeze your shoulders together a little bit and get you that little elevation and lift into the chest. For this first one, keep your toes tucked, and we're coming to our first Cobra. Chin stays tucked in, so your spine is long. Avoid the temptation to lift your chin and compress your cervical spine. Lengthen it. Inhale, lift your belly, chin stays tucked in. So by lifting your belly button up and into the low back musculature, we're actually creating more space for that low back. Instead of dumping on it, lower down, just touch your forehead to the ground, exhale. Use an inhale to initiate your Cobra. So I'll get the spinal extenders working as you inhale. Hands won't move, but feel like they're trying to pull back towards your hips. This is what's really lifting your chest here, your shoulders getting involved. With your Cobra, you want to feel like you could like hover your hands and your chest really wouldn't change that much. It's your back muscles holding you up here. And then lower. We'll do one more before we put this in a little bit of moving action. Inhale, pull the hands back and lift. Belly stays lifted, toes can be tucked, root your tailbone towards your heels. So if you still feel that that's going into the low back, root your tailbone to your heels, lift your belly away from the floor, grab the floor with your fingertips, pull the hands without actually moving them, tuck your chin into the chest, get your neck long, and then lower. Press back up into your quadruped, and let's come to the very top of the mat, stand in a mountain pose, and just quickly here, we'll go through one sun salutation one and put a few of our moves we've been working on over the week together to come into this pretty advanced move of a spinal extension in a Cobra. It might get thrown into all those beginner classes in yoga, but this is a pretty, there's a lot going on here in this action, and we're gonna feel that, so we're gonna be really concentrated. So you start at the top of the mat. You can always have a block available for any modifications. Standing here, leave a little space at the top for your hands to land. Arms are by your side. First, inhale, reach the arms forward and up. So first go forward and up and feel those shoulder blades we've been working and all that space that they have now coming forward. As you exhale, hinge at your hips, just like we did in our hip hinge class. Feel like thumbs in at the hip creases, pulling the hips back in space to get you that flexion in the hips. Go with it. But then eventually hands come down, right foot steps back, right knee comes down. We'll lower the top of the foot and inhale, reach the arms forward and up. Here's our 90-90 low lunge. We had a whole class about this too. Right glute is on, working, holding you up steady. Hands come down, tuck the back toes, lift the back knee, left foot steps back to meet the right and lower your knees to the ground. So this one's also for real. Press into that left hand, press in that right hand. Make sure they're not walked out way in front of you. And also make sure your knees aren't like right underneath you. That's another one I'll see a lot. Really walk those knees back. Core is on here. Kind of press your feet into the ground and zip the front of the belly up. And then lower all the way to the ground. Head of the arm bone, stay lifted. Inhale, pull back your hands, root your tailbone, lift your belly button into your low back. You can keep the toes tucked or you can even untuck your toes if it feels good. And pressing the top of the feet. But again, keep the low back long by rooting your tailbone to your heels. One more breath here. Exhale. Don't lower your arm bones. Keep them lifted. Tuck your toes back again. Push through plank and lift up, down dog. So the pelvis lifts high to get you into down dog. Right foot steps forward. Left knee comes down. You can lower the top of the foot. Inhale, arms reach forward and up. Use a strong core and root your left glute into the ground to open up that left hip flexor. Hands come down. Fingertips are great. Step that left foot to meet the right, but something is grounded into the ground when you come into this forward fold. Your feet and some part of your hands. Inhale, arms reach forward and up. Stand up tall, long spine. Exhale, hinge at the hips. Thumbs can come into the hip crease, or again, palms or fingertips come to the ground. Let the knees bend as much as you'd like. Left foot steps back. You can keep the toes tucked this time for a little different stretch in the foot. Left knee comes down. Inhale, arms reach forward and up. Press into your left big toe mound, fire up your left glute, ribs stay in. Hands come down, plant your palms, lift the back knee, step your right foot to meet your left, then lower your knees. Again, press into your left hand, press into your right hand, grab the floor with the fingertips. Feel like you could dial your left hand out to the left, your right hand out to the right. Glutes are on, 50%. Lower, all the way to the floor. Head of the arm bone stay lifted, right where those arms plug into the shoulders. Don't let them fall to the floor. They stay lifted the whole time. You can even relax your forehead if you want. As you inhale, pull the hands back, root your tailbone and lift your belly. Toes can be tucked or untucked. Take 2 more breaths here. Exhale, pull into your belly even more. You might sink a little bit, just not in the arm bones. Inhale, pull the hands, lengthen and broaden. Your cobra might be a little bit higher up than mine, but make sure that you're not just pushing into the hands, dumping into your low back. Exhale, lower. It's about lengthening your spine, not compressing the low back. Inhale. Lift your belly, root your tailbone, pull back with those hands, and then lower. First, we'll bring our hands underneath our forehead, bend the knees, just get a little wiggle, those legs from side to side. We'll get our second low lunge before we finish up here, but I'm gonna get you one more cobra before we go into that. Again, legs can lower. Toes can be tucked or untucked. This time, bring your arms out by your sides. So they're literally like lined up with your elbows here or with your shoulders, and your elbows are pointing up. Come onto your fingertips so your palms leave the ground. It's like tenting your hands. So the elbows are up. If you were to like look at your arms, it's kind of like you're making an M with both of your arms and your torso here. Again, we're gonna root our tailbone. It's the fingertips grabbing the floor and pulling back this time, but your hands won't really move. With your forehead down, you might not even lift it off the ground. But inhale, lift your belly into the low back, root your tailbone, pull those fingers back, light up those shoulders. If the forehead lifts naturally, just from the lift of the chest, go with it and take 2 more breaths here. So as you exhale, let the belly draw in deeper. As you inhale, root your tailbone more. Pull more with those fingertips. Light those shoulder blades up. Should be feeling like that upper core is working for you here. One more exhale, inhaling. Feel it in the whole back, shoulders down to that tailbone, and then lower. Hands are gonna come back in next to your ribs. You can use the knees or not. As you press up through plank, lift your hips, down dog. Left foot steps forward, right knee comes down. You can keep the toes tucked and inhale, arms reach forward and up. So press that right big toe into the ground, fire up that right glute. Hands come forward, step that right foot to meet the left. You can be up on the fingertips. Exhale, hinge at your hips. Inhale, final back extension here as we bend the knees. Stand up tall with a long spine. And then just reach, feel that extension of the spine while rooting your tailbone. It's like you're in your Cobra Pose, but standing. And you bring your arms down by your side. So I hope that makes Cobra Pose just a little bit clearer for how you want to sustainably be practicing a back extension, using your whole back, not dumping into the low back, and definitely using the strength of your core to create more length in your back. When we strengthen up one side of the musculature, the other side typically lengthens. Whole body, right? It's all one big muscle. Everything's attached. So we gotta squeeze something to release the other one. So I hope that helps out a little bit with Cobra. Hope you're feeling a little bit more centered and you have a little bit more of that excess energy burned off. I thank you all for taking the time just to watch this class and to do something that benefits yourself. When we take a little bit of time to take care of ourselves, engage in this self-care, then we are taking care of ourselves so that we are able to go out into the world and create that change that we want to see in it. And so bring my hands together, just an acknowledgement of that work that you're putting in, and know that the light in me honors and respects the light that shines within each and every one of you, that light that truly is within all of us and connecting each of us together. Namaskar, everybody. And have a great rest of the week.